Chapter 1945. Crown Prince really can't take the blow. It's just a small setback and you've already turned yourself into such a dispirited look. Those who don't know would have thought that Crown Prince had already been crippled. The young lady's voice was crisp and melodious, as though she was drinking from an icy spring. However, her tone was filled with disdain and arrogance. Who? The drunk man banged on the table as he staggered as he stood up. He squinted his eyes, as though he couldn't see the person in front of him clearly. His entire body reeked of alcohol, causing the entire luxurious bedroom to be filled with the smell of alcohol. TSK. Yi-Ching Luo crossed her arms in front of her chest as her slender brows rose slightly, her eyes filled with a sneer of ridicule. Looks like I've wasted my time coming here today. Saying that, she turned around. Her flame-like skirt swept out in an arc that resembled a blazing sunset glow. The man stared at that arc. His pupils suddenly contracted as he staggered forward and chased after her for a few steps. With a put-on sound, he fell heavily onto the ground. The man's dragon totem, which was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, seemed to have lost its ferocity at this instance. Yi-Ching Luo's footsteps took a slight pause. She slowly turned around as she looked at the disheveled man who had fallen onto the ground. Ling Fengying, what else do you want to say? The man in front of her was the former second prince, the current crown prince, Ling Fengying. That handsome and delicate-looking, seemingly harmless face had long been covered with dejection and vicissitudes of life. Ling Fengying struggled, trying to climb up from the ground. But after he was drunk, he couldn't muster up any strength. He felt as though he was stepping on cotton. But his consciousness was telling him very clearly. He absolutely could not let the young lady in front of him leave. This young lady was his god. Ling Fengying was so drunk that he couldn't see who the person was. There was only a strong sense of familiarity and that feeling which made him inexplicably fearful, controlling him to ask Yi-Ching Luo to stay. Don't go. Don't go. Ling Fengying mumbled in fear as he raised his hand up high, as he grabbed towards Yi-Ching Luo's direction. But he couldn't grab anything at all. Save me. Save me, I beg you. The current Ling Fengying, where had the previous gentleness, high spirits, or the royal family's nobility? He was dejected, as if he had found a life-saving straw. He only wanted to hold on tightly and beg her to save him from this deep and fiery quagmire. Yi-Ching Luo looked at him coldly. There was not the slightest emotion in his eyes. In her memory, in terms of appearance, Ling Fengying might not be able to match up to Ling Fenghua. However, his explosive aura, as well as his own ability and intelligence, all surpassed Ling Fenghua's. But he didn't expect the current Ling Fengying. His endurance was actually so poor. If it wasn't for the sake of the Mu family, she really didn't want to have anything to do with this Ling Fengying. She scoffed lightly as she slowly walked towards Ling Fengying. Her slender fingers pinched a pill. With a flick of his finger, the pill drew a beautiful arc in the air. That pill landed steadily into Ling Fengying's mouth. He looked up at her blankly. When the pill entered his mouth, an extremely bitter and spicy taste filled his mouth. Ling Fengying only felt a splitting headache. He held his head and beat it fiercely. From the beginning to the end, Yi-Ching Luo had her arms crossed over her chest as she watched coldly from the sidelines. Approximately half the time it took for an incense stick to burn. Ling Fengying slowly stopped his painful howls. He fell onto the ground as he hugged his head and twisted body, slowly relaxing by quite a bit. He panted heavily as he held his head, as he slowly raised his head. What entered his eyes was a young lady dressed in red. Her flames were like fire, as though she was a fairy from the ninth heavens. Chapter 1946. The young lady in front of him and the figure in his memory slowly overlapped. Ling Fengying's pupils contracted as the hand which was supporting his head stiffened. His thin lips trembled as his hoarse voice suddenly rang, "Yi." Yi Qing Luo, it's you, it's you. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled up in ridicule. Sober up. He was stunned as he smelled the thick alcohol stench on him as a sliver of embarrassment surfaced on his face. He frantically climbed up from the ground as he patted his wrinkled robes. He recalled. Not long ago, Yi Qing Qian used a forceful attitude to ask for the West Continent's tiger talisman from his hands. And she used such humiliating words to humiliate him. But there was nothing he could do. As a crown prince, there was nothing he could do. He didn't even have the right to walk out of this luxurious palace. He only wanted to use wine to numb himself. Only when he was drunk, so drunk that he had no consciousness. So that he wouldn't recall his useless side. After that. Then he seemed to have seen a fairy. The fairy gave him a pill and he. Ling Fengning suddenly regained his senses. Earlier what you fed me was a sobering pill. Otherwise what did you think it was? Yi Qing Luo's brows rose. Poison. You don't have the right to poison me now. Ling Fengning pursed his lips as his eyes shot out anger, but he clenched his fists tightly as he suppressed it deep down in his heart. Yes, based on Yi Qing Luo's current status. If she wanted to kill him, it would just be a matter of minutes. You're looking for me because you want me to do something for you. Ling Fengning didn't beat around the bush. He was very curious. Now that the entire West Continent was already in Yi Qing Qian's hands, what other ways did Yi Qing Luo have to reverse this ending? Yi Qing Luo's lips curled as her eyes smiled calmly. Not for me, but for yourself. Ling Fengying's expression turned cold. Yi Qing Luo continued to smile. Don't tell me you're willing to let that woman who almost became your wife control your life and death. Are you really willing to hand over the West Continent's imperial court? She paused for a moment as her smile became even more ostentatious. Ling Fengying, your ambition will not allow you to be willing. As though what he was thinking in his heart was poked. Ling Fengying's fists were clenched tightly. His body was taut, and his muscles were clearly defined. Yi Qing Luo saw his most direct reaction change and her brows rose frivolously as she asked, "How is it? Do you need my help?" The corners of Tang Beiyuan's mouth twitched. As expected of the future mistress of their imperial palace. He really wasn't willing to suffer any losses. She took the initiative to look for Ling Fengying. No matter what, Ling Fengying should be the one to help her with this matter. In this way, after the matter was settled, Yi Qing Luo would owe Ling Fengying a favor. But under Yi Qing Luo's few words. Hence it became Ling Fengying who needed Yi Qing Luo's help. The person who owed him a favor had evolved into Ling Fengying. The future mistress and Di Zun were a perfect match. Not only was Tang Beiyuan's lips twitching, even Ling Fengying's gaze towards Yi Qing Luo was filled with speechlessness. Perhaps he already knew Yi Qing Luo's character. Ling Fengying didn't want to argue with Yi Qing Luo over this meaningless favor. What do you want me to do? The expression on his face was no longer as dejected as before. Yi Qing Luo's eyes were filled with admiration. This Ling Fengying was indeed much smarter than Ling Fenghua. If it was Ling Fenghua, he would probably blame today's downfall on her. For example, it was because of her that he gave up on Yi Qing Qian, causing Yi Qing Qian to come back for revenge. However, Ling Fengying quickly adjusted his mentality. He also quickly understood which choice he should make was the most correct choice. Star. Chapter 1947. This Ling Fengying was indeed more suitable for the position of monarch than Ling Fenghua. She curled her lips into a sweet smile. If you still have the will to fight, it means that you can still be saved. Yi Qing Luo's eyes were long and narrow as she smiled bewitchingly. I need your identity as the crown prince. A malicious glint flashed past Ling Fengying's gentle brows. He raised his head, his eyes flashing. All right, as long as you can help me take back the empire of the West Continent, I will do my best to satisfy your request. The horizon was pitch black. The atmosphere was gloomy and eerie. West Billow Square. Thousands of commoners were gathered in a circle. There were 3 inner layers and 3 outer layers, surrounding the West Billow Square. The faces of the commoners were filled with solemnity and suppressed anger. However, they could only stand where they were, unable to act rashly. Most of these commoners were unwilling to stand here. And he was forced by Yi Ching Qian to stand here and wait till midnight to start the massacre. Only a small part of the people are here because those who are tied to the altar in the square are the young and old of the Mu family. The Mu family had always practiced medicine to help the people, so they would not charge fees randomly. What's more, if they encountered a poor family, they would even receive free medical treatment. Most of the people in Shilin Square have been treated by the Mu family. Right now, the entire Mu family, old and young, was tied to the sacrificial altar. Once the midnight hour passed, they would slaughter the entire family. The commoners' hearts were filled with rage towards Yi Ching Qian and the others' cruelty. But what he hated the most was the Yi Ching Luo who had yet to appear. Yi Ching Qian sat majestically by the side of the altar, lying on the luxurious and comfortable recliner. Her posture was elegant, and she didn't care about how the people around her looked at her. Yi Ching Qian felt that she was extremely foolish in the past. For the sake of a false reputation, she pretended to be a gentle, virtuous, elegant, and generous young lady. They lived such a tiring life, but in the end, they still couldn't get anything good. It would be better to be like this. Below one person, above tens of thousands. She could do whatever she wanted to do without any scruples. Anyway, she had her own backer. She had nothing to fear. This was a place where the strong were respected and strength was supreme. She just needed to be strong. Look, now, how colorful her life was. Everyone was afraid of her, afraid of her. She could summon clouds and rain with a flip of her hand. She could control the royal family if she wanted to. If he wanted to destroy the Three Springs sect, he could destroy the Three Springs sect. The entire Western continent was already under her control. This was the life she, Yi Ching Qian, wanted. Chapter 1948. Hey Ji. Yi Ching Qian called out coldly and arrogantly. He Ji walked out from the side of the chair and bowed respectfully as she looked at Yi Ching Qian. He Ji was the maid that the wolf Saint Dharma had arranged to serve Yi Ching Qian after she'd entered the dark forces. Let the night watch, the entire Three Springs city will sound the gongs, we must force Yi Ching Luo out. Yi Ching Qian's lips were smiling, but it seemed extremely cold. She had a delicate face and a captivating gaze. He Ji's heart couldn't help but be tempted by Yi Ching Qian's looks. She had been following Yi Ching Qian and knew her changes better than anyone else. She looked at Yi Ching Qian, from the original gentle and lovely person, slowly following the wolf Saint Dharma's request, completely transforming herself into. Just like her name in the dark forces. Fox Protector. A seductive and alluring demon fox. The current Yi Ching Qian was indeed a vixen. Yi Ching Qian's backing was the wolf Saint Dharma. She relied on the wolf Saint Dharma to survive. And because of this, bit by bit, she transformed herself into the image that the wolf Saint Dharma liked. Although Yi Ching Qian had long given up her ego for power, He Ji had to admit. This Yi Ching Qian was even more dazzling than the previous Yi Ching Qian. Hearing Yi Ching Qian's command, He Ji nodded obediently as she bowed and retreated from the altar. Not long later, the surroundings were filled with extremely loud gongs. There were almost 20 over gongs. They were forced by the group of forces controlled by Yi Ching Qian to scurry around the city. The gongs in her hands were banging loudly. Shouts were heard one after another, 11 o'clock, 11 o'clock. It's almost midnight, midnight has arrived. Listening to the incessant sounds of the night watch. Mu family's patriarch Mu Zhao revealed a sullen expression as he stared at the demon fox lady and gritted his teeth. Yi Qing Qian. Do you know that the dark forces had long been annihilated by the imperial palace and had long become the remnants of Nirvana realm in various continents? How dare you collude with the dark forces? Others couldn't tell where this bunch of powerful cultivators came from. Mu Lai was very clear about this. His two sons were extremely attentive towards the previous young matriarch of Three Springs sect. As a result, every day when they were eating, they would hear about Yi Qing Luo's matters. With regards to those shocking things that Yi Qing Luo had done before, Mu Lai knew everything clearly. Naturally, they understood that the power which Yi Qing Qian relied on was the dark forces. Mu Lai was extremely disdainful of this. Ha! Yi Qing Qian proudly raised her eyebrows as she walked towards Mu Lai. Pursue and kill surviving members. But Patriarch Mu, this young miss has been in control of the Western continent for a full 3 days. As for her, even if she resorted to unscrupulous means, she would not be able to obtain the sincerity that belonged to her. Whether it was in the past or now. She had never had any sincerity. On the surface, the wolf saint technique looked like he doted on her, loved her, and doted on her. But Yi Qing Qian herself was very clear. The holy wolf did not love her sincerely at all. She didn't know why the wolf saint technique would treat her so well, so much so that just by looking at her, he would be moved. But Yi Qing Qian could feel it. The holy wolf technique's heart was not with her. Yi Qing Qian laughed softly. There was a tinge of bitterness in her laughter. You're really the kindest person in the West Lawn continent. This miss would like to see how hard you can be for that slut. As though it was to vent the bitterness in her heart. Chapter 1950. Yi Qing Qian. Mu Lai roared as his face was filled with rage. He kept struggling to get up, but the iron chains on his body didn't allow him to break free. The Mu family were all fed with the supreme profound medicine soup. Unable to use their profound energy, they had no way to resist. Mu Lai's eyes were red as he gritted his teeth and stared at Yi Qing Qian. Come at me if you have the ability. The wife he loved dearly in the palm of his hand. The wife who usually couldn't bear to raise her voice. But she was slapped in front of his eyes. How could he tolerate this? Looking at Mu Lai's furious look, Yi Qing Qian's heart finally felt a sense of pleasure. She giggled as she walked towards Shui Fei Shui, who was sent flying on the ground. Her gorgeous face revealed a vicious sneer. What's the point of coming at you? It's more interesting if I hit her and you feel heartache. She leaned over and grabbed Shui Fei Shui's hair. She lifted Shui Fei Shui up harshly. Shui Fei Shui had been in the pugilistic world, and even after many years of marriage, the pugilistic world spirit was still there. Even if her scalp was in pain, she didn't make a sound. Mu Lai clenched his teeth as his eyes turned red. He struggled with all his might, wanting to rush up and tear Yi Qing Qian into pieces. But no matter how hard he tried, his hands and body were still bleeding from the friction of the chains. There was no way he could escape from the iron chains. The onlookers stared at this scene. Their hearts were burning with rage, but there was nothing they could do. Previously there was a cultivator who had been saved by the Mu family who wanted to save the Mu family. But before he got close to the altar, he was cut into pieces by that lady who looked like a demon fox. It was really 1,000 cuts. Not one more cut, not one less cut. Right on the West Square, in front of thousands of people. The methods were bloody and cruel, leaving a shadow in everyone's mind. She wanted to save the Mu family. But she was afraid of the consequences. Mu Lai's actions obviously made Yi Qing Qian happy. Her 5 fingers clasped Shui Fei Shui's chin as she looked down at the woman who was obviously in her 30s, but still young and beautiful. It's said that a man loves a woman only because of her good looks. I really want to prove this saying. Yi Qing Qian's lips curled into a sinister smile. Madam Mu, say. If I were to leave a few scars on your face, would your husband still regard you as his life? Shui Feishua sneered and spat on her face. Go ahead and try. Yi Qing Qian's eyes were filled with coldness. She suddenly tightened her grip. Shui Feishua's face turned pale. The sharp pain in her lower jaw made her sweat profusely. Yi Qing Qian raised her other hand and wiped the saliva off her face. Suddenly, he took out a dagger from somewhere and placed it on Shui Feishua's face. I'll fulfill your wish. Yi Qing Qian. How dare you? Don't you dare touch her. I will never let you off. Perhaps it was because of his rage, Mu Lai broke free from the shackles of the chains. His hands and the places where the chains were entangled were covered in blood. He didn't mind as he pounced in front of Yi Qing Qian and pushed her away fiercely. Yi Qing Qian had not expected the Mu family to break free from the chains. She couldn't react in time and was hit by Mu Lai. Yi Qing Qian fell onto the ground. And because of this collision, Mu Lai hugged Shui Feishua and fell onto the ground. The supreme profound medicine in his body had long expelled his profound energy and strength out of his body. After Mu Lai fell onto the ground, he no longer had any strength. The guards at the side saw that something had happened to Yi Qing Qian and rushed forward to surround the altar. Yi Qing Qian got up with the help of the maid. Her sinister eyes looked coldly at the man and woman who were hugging each other tightly. The flames burning in her eyes became more and more vigorous. What a pair of lovers! I'll fulfill the affection between you. After midnight, I'll be the first to deal with the two of you. Yi Qing Qian strode to the side of Mu Lai and his wife and looked down at them condescendingly. Now, I'll teach you what a well-behaved and sensible captive is. Star. Chapter 1951. A pair of lovers. Ha! Her biggest hobby now was to break up lovers and torture lovers. To see two people who loved each other unable to be together. The flames in Yi Qing Qian's eyes were filled with a horrifying madness. She flipped her palm and a long whip which was flickering with profound yin qi appeared in her palm. Yi Qing Qian squinted her beautiful eyes as her lips curled into a sneer. After instructing the night watch, He Ji who was returning to the altar looked at that long whip and her heart suddenly trembled. This long whip was the cursed magic weapon that Wolf Saint Dharma had gifted to Yi Qing Qian, Dark Illusion Whip. This was one of the dark magic weapons. Compared to those so-called divine artifacts, its power could only be greater. Moreover, it had the ability to devour curses and darkness. Yi Qing Qian rarely took out the Dark Illusion Whip. It could be seen that Yi Qing Qian was really angry. He Ji suppressed the uneasiness in her heart as she lowered her head and returned to the reclining chair. Mu Lai saw the profound yin qi lingering on that long whip and his expression suddenly changed. He was from the Mu family, which was one of the four great families. Even if he couldn't tell what kind of magic weapon it was. But he was very clear in his heart. Once they were hit by the magic weapon, they were human shells without any profound qi. They were unable to withstand the magic power of the magic weapon. What's more, there was a possibility that their souls would scatter. Mu Lai used the last of his strength to block Shui Fei Shui behind him. A pair of red eyes stared at Yi Qing Qian resentfully. Yi Qing Qian. My son cares about his mother the most. If you do anything to Fei Shui, don't even think of using us to force Yi Qing Luo out. Finally anxious. Yi Qing Qian laughed crazily. The long whip in her hand was like a poisonous snake as she looked ahead vigilantly, waiting for the opportunity to move. On the account that you are so protective of your wife, I will satisfy you. Her words just ended. Suddenly the long whip shook. Everyone saw a long whip which looked like a black poisonous snake flying straight over. That long whip was close to Mu Lai at the moment. Suddenly a burst of profound yin qi was set off. Bam! The long whip lashed on Mu Lai's face, leaving a bloody mark. The blood was mixed with black mysterious yin qi, which was corroding his wounds. Mu Lai's body fell heavily to the ground. Xiao! There was another sound of the whip tearing through the air. Shui Feishua's body was swept up by the long whip and thrown into the air. Yi Qingqian's hand that was holding onto the long whip suddenly gave it a tug. Shui Feishue fell heavily from the sky. With the pull of the long whip, their falling speed was also extremely fast. Boom! With a loud thud, the entire altar was smashed into a huge pit. Crushed stones flew everywhere, and smoke and dust rose in spirals, covering everything on the altar. Mu Lai struggled to get up and shouted at the top of his lungs, "Flying snow! Flying snow!" With every shout, he coughed out a mouthful of blood. When the old and young of the Mu family saw this, all of them were so infuriated that green veins popped out, wishing that they could break free from the iron chains and rush up to kill Yi Qingqian. That height! That kind of strength! How could an ordinary person without any xian qi withstand it? Moreover, the altar had collapsed. Shui Feishue was afraid. Everyone's mood suddenly became heavy. Eldest young miss. Eldest young miss. Just as the atmosphere was inexplicably oppressive, the anger in the hearts of the people was also provoked and could not be tolerated. On the altar, a panicked voice suddenly sounded. Chapter 1954. The raging flame fan was like a flame, jumping around Yi Qing Luo's fingertips. Vaguely, as Yi Qing Luo's movements became bigger, the sparks turned into a huge fire dragon in a split second. Following that, the raging flame fan shot out numerous slender silver threads, entangling towards Yi Qingqian's direction. "Yi Qing Luo, do you think you can still trap me now?" Yi Qingqian snorted coldly. The resentment in her eyes was extremely cold. The dark magic whip in her hand swam strangely, piercing through the air, looking sharper than a sharp blade. That whip lashed fiercely on the altar. It could pull out numerous long whip marks that were deeply embedded in the ground. Had to admit, Yi Qingqian's whip skills, coupled with the power of the cursed magic weapon. One after another, the long whip struck towards Yi Qing Luo's face fiercely. The angle of the long whip was very tricky. Yi Qingqian obviously wanted to ruin Yi Qing Luo's looks. And Yi Qing Luo's figure was agile. Her footwork almost made her come and go without a trace. Yi Qingqian could not even touch the corner of Yi Qing Luo's clothes. On the contrary, Yi Qingqian herself. Under Yi Qing Luo's teasing time and time again, the hurricane and profound energy which Yi Qing Luo unleashed broke that exquisite and gorgeous long dress which was like water ripples. Bright red blood oozed out from the wound. Yi Qingqian bared her teeth in anger. Her expression was sinister, staring fiercely at Yi Qing Luo's direction. The long whip was going to take Yi Qing Luo's life. However, the long whip's lightning-fast attack had yet to come close. Yi Qing Luo disappeared again. Yi Qing Luo. If you have the ability, don't try to escape like a turtle. Yi Qingqian gritted her teeth in anger. She felt like a pet being teased. Yi Qing Luo snorted lightly, standing 3 steps away from Yi Qingqian, squinting at her. "In that case, eldest sister wants to fight with me openly?" Staring at Yi Qing Luo's clear eyes, Yi Qingqian's heart was overwhelmed with a feeling of horror. Fight her fair and square. Yi Qingqian's sinister eyes turned cold as her murderous aura appeared. "That's right. Hee hee. Then I shall fulfill sister's wish." Yi Qing Luo chuckled lightly, like a warm breeze, blowing against everyone's eardrums. The beautiful girl was as enchanting as a painting. In the next instant, he disappeared into thin air. Yi Qing Luo had unknowingly stood in front of Yi Qingqian. They were face to face, extremely close to one another. Yi Qingqian was so shocked that she took a step back and let out an scream. Before he could react, Yi Qingluo's lips were already curling into a smile, her bottomless enchanting eyes seemed to be swirling with a whirlpool. Yi Qingqian was so shocked that her heart almost jumped out of her throat. Her face was pale, and she kept retreating. However, Yi Qingluo had already waved her fist and directly punched Yi Qingqian's face. Pang! A punch landed. It did not carry the slightest bit of profound energy. It was a solid punch. Yi Qingqian's nose spurted out a stream of blood. In an instant, it dyed Yi Qingqian's exquisite face. Boom! There was another loud noise. Yi Qingqian fell straight onto the altar. Her nose was bleeding, her robe was full of scratches and blood splattered everywhere. She was thrown onto the ground in a sorry state. The current Yi Qingqian was in a sorry state no matter how one looked at it. Where was the slightest bit of his previous elegance, arrogance and despotic demeanor from before? The surrounding commoners couldn't help but burst out laughing. They expressed that although they didn't have any good impression of Yi Qingluo, but seeing them torturing Yi Qingqian, they felt great. Someone should take care of that vicious woman. Star. Chapter 1955. Yi Qingluo walked slowly to the front of Yi Qingqian. She looked down at Yi Qingqian from above. Just like before, Yi Qingqian looked down at Mu Lai. That high and mighty, insufferably arrogant. As if she was looking at an ant. Yi Qingqian only felt a surge of blood in her chest, a mouthful of blood gushed out from her throat. She stared fiercely at Yi Qingluo, her eyes filled with hatred. Yi Qingluo's eyes curved into crescents as her lips curled into a faint cold arc of ridicule, as though she was ridiculing her for overestimating herself. What a pity, elder sister, even if it's just an aboveboard, I can still face you. Her light voice was mixed with endless mockery. Yi Qingqian's whole body tensed up, trembling violently. It was angry. Yi Qingqian was so angry that her whole body was trembling. She couldn't believe that Yi Qingluo was so powerful. She thought that with the wolf saint technique threatening the pharaoh, using the dark arts to give her a steady stream of profound yin qi, so that she could continue to upgrade her profound grade. The current her strength could totally reach the level of a sky mystic supreme. Coupled with the dark magic whip that the wolf saint technique gave her. No matter what, to defeat Yi Qingluo, it was totally effortless. But in fact, the one who fell to the ground was her, Sky Mystic Supreme. Looking at the entire Nirvana realm, the number of people who could reach the Sky Mystic Supreme could be counted with 2 hands. Of course, there were many experts who liked to live incognito. But no matter how many people there were who hid their identities, there was only one problem. Sky Mystic Supreme was rare in the world. Yi Qingqian would never believe it. Yi Qingluo, a waste for 15 years, could be more powerful than a Sky Mystic Supreme in such a short period of time. There must be someone secretly helping Yi Qingluo. It must be so. Yi Qingqian kept finding excuses to numb herself. Looking at Yi Qingluo's face filled with ridicule. She gritted her teeth and suddenly got up from the ground. The blue water patterned dress was like rolling waves. The ripples of the flowing water were so bright. Yi Qingluo had already guessed what Yi Qingqian wanted to do. At this time, even if she chased up, it would be too late. She simply stood on the spot, looking at Yi Qingqian with a smile. It was as if he was watching a monkey show. After Yi Qingqian left Yi Qingluo's attack range, her figure stretched out as she headed straight towards the direction where the Mu families old and young were tied up in a row. Her gloomy eyes were burning with rage. She quickly stretched out her hand and grabbed old Master Mu. The long whip in her hand was placed across old Master Mu's neck. Yi Qingluo, how dare you! Don't forget, the Mu family is in my hands. Father. Old man. Mu family's old and young cried out in shock as they looked at Yi Qingqian anxiously. These cries of surprise pleased Yi Qingqian. She hooked her arms around old Master Mu's neck and unlocked the iron chain, then step by step, she walked towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. Yi Qing Luo, drink the supreme profound medicine soup. Yi Qingqian glanced sideways. He Ji understood and immediately took out a medicine bottle from her waist. That medicine bottle was thrown towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose as she quietly watched the medicine bottle drop beside her feet. The smile on her lips was tainted with a trace of cold ridicule. Yi Qingqian raged as she pressed the long whip against old Master Mu's neck even tighter. Slut! If you don't drink the supreme profound medicine soup, I will kill old Master Mu right in front of you. Star. Chapter 1956. Despicable. Shameless. When the commoners heard that, they clenched their fists in anger as they stared fiercely at Yi Qingqian's direction. This woman was truly a first-class poisonous woman. The commoners had witnessed Yi Qing Luo's ability earlier. Thinking of those rumors about Yi Qing Luo. These commoners who were blaming Yi Qing Luo had no choice but to place their hopes on her. Only Yi Qing Luo could kill Yi Qingqian. Only Yi Qing Luo could save the West Continent. If Yi Qing Luo drank the profound medicine soup, wouldn't she be at Yi Qingqian's mercy? Moreover, based on Yi Qingqian's vicious temperament, even if Yi Qing Luo really listened to her and drank the profound medicine soup, Yi Qingqian would never let the Mu family off. But if Yi Qing Luo didn't drink the profound medicine soup, the Mu family would still have to die. How should Yi Qing Luo choose? The commoners placed their hopeful gazes on Yi Qing Luo. The atmosphere, at this moment, became extremely oppressive. Yi Qingqian obviously knew what everyone was thinking. She raised her lips, that face which was covered by messy long hair, still couldn't hide the murderous intent she was giving off. What she wanted was exactly like this. No matter what Yi Qing Luo chose, Yi Qing Luo would eventually become the sinner of the West Continent. She wanted to destroy the West Continent. Destroy the continent which used to laugh at her. Moreover, she wanted to push the destruction of the West Continent to Yi Qing Luo alone. She wanted Yi Qing Luo to be condemned by thousands of people. In the historical records, it was a calamity which brought calamity to the country and people. Yi Qing Luo, I don't have that much patience to wait for your decision. Old Master Mu's life is in your hands. Yi Qingqian screamed sharply, her eyes filled with complacency. Lass! Don't listen to her, I'm already so old, I've lived enough. Don't worry about me, just do it and kill this little slut. Mu Xiao spat. He wasn't afraid of the dark illusory whip on his neck at all. Shut up. Yi Qingqian increased the strength of the magic whip. The magic whip, which was surrounded by black qi, drew a line of blood on old Master Mu's neck. Immediately, her eyes flashed with madness. Yi Qing Luo, immediately pick up the profound medicine soup and drink it. Yi Qing Luo lowered her eyes and stared at the medicine bottle by her feet as she pushed it with her toes. The medicine bottle rolled on the altar, emitting a clear gurgling sound. The breeze swirled her loose black hair around her shoulders. Her red dress was burning like a raging flame. The peerlessly beautiful and enchanting young lady slowly raised her head. Her charming eyes were flowing with light, as she looked at Yi Qingqian with a smile that didn't look like a smile. She curled her lips and chuckled. The laughter was mixed with extreme mockery and disdain. You, what are you laughing at? Yi Qingqian's heart trembled, an inexplicable fear towards Yi Qing Luo welled up in her heart again. Yi Qing Luo stared fixedly at Yi Qingqian as she crossed her arms over her chest and gave an incomparably calm smile. Why don't you give it a try? Smart eldest sister, you should be very clear that once you hurt anyone from the Mu family, the consequences. What? Would be. Right? She deliberately raised her eyebrows and dragged out the last word. The threat was obvious. Yi Qingqian was so infuriated that her body tensed up, but the magic whip which was stuck on Mu Zhao's neck was unable to move. She understood. Of course she understood. Once she killed Mu Zhao, what would be the consequences? Now, she had the entire Mu family in her hands, so Yi Qing Luo didn't dare to act rashly. But if she killed one of them, Yi Qing Luo would absolutely strike her without any qualms. Yi Qing Luo, that slut, actually thought of such a despicable idea. Chapter 1957. When the commoners heard Yi Qing Luo's words, initially they didn't react to what she meant. Later on, looking at Yi Qingqian's expression, they were suddenly enlightened. Momentarily, the commoners were filled with emotions. This 15-year-old young lady who was hailed as a legend indeed lived up to her reputation. Under such circumstances, her brain could still move so quickly. Not only did she ensure the safety of the Mu family, she even threatened Yi Qingqian instead. Even though Yi Qingqian held the lives of the Mu family in her hands. But, Yi Qing Luo could still be on the same status as her. What kind of boldness did she have to be able to do this to such an extent? If it was them, they would absolutely not have this boldness and the guts to use the lives of the Mu family as a threat instead. If Yi Qing Luo knew what the commoners were thinking about, she would definitely touch her chin as she gave an evil smile. Foolish humans, you're still too inexperienced. How could she, Yi Qing Luo, possibly just simply threaten someone who dared to threaten her? Yi Qingqian was extremely infuriated, but she indeed didn't dare to act rashly. Her expression was gloomy as she looked at Mu Zhao, who had a fearless expression and was still looking at her with ridicule. Forcefully suppressing the surging anger in her heart, a glint flashed past her eyes. Yi Qing Luo, did you really think that I only have the Mu family as a bargaining chip? She clasped Mu Zhao's neck tightly as her long whip danced, pointing towards the surroundings of West Lawn Square, towards those thousands of commoners. These are all my bargaining chips. Yi Qingqian's words had just landed. Not knowing when, waves after waves of profound yin qi had surged over from the vicinity of West Lawn Square. Those profound yin qi brought along a sinister cold storm as it wantonly plundered everything around it. In just a short moment, it had covered the entire West Lawn Square tightly. Following that, the entire crowd of commoners were surrounded by a total of 200 dark forces black robes. Yi Qingqian. You despicable woman. Dark forces. These are all people from the dark forces. What are you trying to do? Yi Qingqian, do you want all of us to become the dark forces' food? When the commoners saw those 200 black-robed remnants, their expressions had a huge change. These black-robed remnants had obviously been lying in ambush in the surroundings. He had been waiting for this moment. The commoners actually knew clearly in their hearts that they were forced to stand by the side of the public square by Yi Qingqian was actually for convenience, so that Yi Qingqian could kill them on the spot. But when he saw so many black-robed survivors, the people's hearts couldn't help but tremble in fear. Yi Qingqian allowed those people to accuse and abuse her. In her eyes, there was only Yi Qing Luo alone. She stared sinisterly at Yi Qing Luo, hoping to see a sliver of panic and fear on Yi Qing Luo's face. But after staring at Yi Qing Luo for some time, she was disappointed. When Yi Qing Luo saw the surrounding black-robed remnants, the expression on her face didn't change at all. He seemed to have guessed that such a thing would happen. This really made Yi Qingqian feel as though she had used all her strength to hit a ball of soft cotton. Not only did it not let her vent the anger in her heart. On the contrary, it made her feel even more aggrieved. Yiqing Qian was annoyed, so annoyed that her entire heart was burning. A pair of fox-like beautiful eyes gradually exuded mysterious yin qi. Wisps of mysterious yin qi swirled in her eyes. A strong murderous intent shot out. Chapter 1958. The dark illusory whip was laced with a dense profound yin qi. In the air, it gave off a piercing sound. When it landed heavily, the entire altar was embedded several meters deep as black qi curled up, which was extremely horrifying. The commoners instinctively screamed out in fear as they retreated a few steps. But they were pressured by the 200 black-robed remnants behind them till they couldn't even take half a step back. Yiqing Qian gave a cold laugh as she pinched Mu Zhao's shoulder, and with a leap, she charged towards the direction of those commoners. She wanted Yiqing Luo to see it with her own eyes. How she wanted her to see with her own eyes, how she killed those commoners. She wanted Yiqing Luo to think about it all the time. Those innocent commoners, all died because of her, Yiqing Luo. Ha! Behind her, Yiqing Luo's leisurely laughter was filled with ridicule, as it was filled with endless ridicule. Her slender brows rose slightly as her brows revealed a flirtatious expression, which made her look extremely alluring. This wasn't a 15-year-old young lady's temperament and charm. But when it was on Yiqing Luo, it seemed to be natural. Yiqing Qian, do you really think that everything is under your control? The young lady's sweet voice was mixed with a sweet smile. As though it was just a simple conversation. But, her words made one feel a chill in one's heart. Immediately after, the young lady giggled, unfortunately, wherever I'm around, you're destined to lose control. Because you'll forever be my supporting role, forever to be stepped on by me. Her voice paused and her tone suddenly changed, extremely incisive as she said word by word, don't turn over. Arrogant and presumptuous words. Insolent and unbridled ridicule. Yiqing Qian was even more annoyed hearing that. Her eyes were burning with fury, as all her thoughts were placed on those commoners. The dark illusory whip in her hands was like 10,000 poisonous snakes as it madly swept towards the commoners. Ah! Suddenly, a miserable shriek was heard. The originally arrogant Yiqing Qian had yet to make a move when her body crashed heavily onto the side of the altar. Following that, she was hit by the side and fell below the altar, right beside those commoners' feet. The commoners retreated frantically as if they had touched the plague, and they screamed in disgust. That poisonous snake, which had yet to fly out, also retracted back because of Yiqing Qian's death. Yiqing Qian fell onto the ground as the dark illusion whip lost the support of the profound energy and was like a dead object as it circled around Yiqing Qian. She abruptly stood up and fearfully stared at Mu Zhao, who was floating in midair and laughing out loud. You! How could you, just now, just as she was about to attack the commoners? It was Mu Zhao who took advantage of the moment when she was in a fit of rage and anxiously attacked her chest with his palm. This caused her, who had almost gone berserk, to shatter the condensation of her profound qi. The backlash from the profound yin aura caused her internal organs to feel an intense pain. Not just Grandpa, but also us. At some point, the 14 people of the Mu family who were tied up in chains stood up. They were supporting each other and their imposing manner was overbearing as they stared coldly at Yiqing Qian. The profound qi that lingered around each of them was fluctuating. At the very least, they were all profound practitioners who were above the third grade of the earth profound realm. The commoners sighed in their hearts. No wonder they were one of the 4 great profound families, the Mu family. Not only did they have outstanding abilities in terms of alchemy and treatment. Even his own profound strength was maintained at a level that could only be high and not low. Looking at the aggressive people of the Mu family, Mu Qiqi was stunned. Chapter 1959. She had obviously witnessed the Mu family being fed the supreme profound medicine soup with her own eyes. She had also tested it personally. The Mu family's profound energy had indeed been sealed. She was waiting for Yi Qing Luo to come to the West Square. In front of Yi Qing Luo, to cripple the Mu family's meridians, brutally killing them. How could the Mu family's profound energy be restored? This was impossible. Where did the deviation go? Looking at Yi Qing Qian's distorted face, extremely pale and filled with disbelief, Shui Fei Shui gave a light snort. With Mu Lai's support, she slowly walked out. Her slender jade-like fingers pinched a medicine bottle. She shook it and sneered, "This is all thanks to Miss Qing Luo, for giving me the antidote for the supreme profound medicine soup." Shui Fei Shui's heart was filled with admiration towards Yi Qing Luo. This kind of admiration had already surpassed the boundaries of age. No matter if Yi Qing Luo was just a 15-year-old young lady. Shui Fei Shui's respect towards Yi Qing Luo was from the bottom of her heart. The antidote for the supreme profound medicine soup was secretly given to her by Yi Qing Luo when she first appeared and saved her. When Yi Qing Luo saved her, the profound medicine soup on her had already been cured. After that, while Yi Qing Luo attracted Yi Qing Qian's attention, she fed the antidote to the Mu family. While Yi Qing Luo was intentionally provoking Yi Qing Qian, constantly attracting her attention. They had already taken the opportunity to adjust the profound energy in their bodies. Shui Fei Shui's gaze towards Yi Qing Luo was filled with gentleness. If this lass could become the Mu family's daughter-in-law, how good would that be? Her ability was strong and she had extremely high attainments in medicinal pills. Unfortunately, her two brats were not worthy of this lass. Mu Lai saw through his beloved wife's thoughts with one look. He smiled helplessly, holding Shui Fei Shui's hand tightly. Now was not the time to think about these things. After Mu Lai's reminder, Shui Fei Shui finally straightened her expression, raised her brows and looked at Yi Qing Qian. Yi Qing Qian, as the eldest Missy of Three Springs sect, you borrowed the dark forces to destroy Three Springs sect, and even the entire West continent. This is unforgivable. My Mu family absolutely won't let you off easily. Mu Xiao stood in front of the young and old of the Mu family, full of dignity. I, Mu Xiao, have retired from the martial world for many years, but today, in order to restore peace to the West Wave continent, Mu Xiao, will do everything in my power to expel your dark forces from the West Wave continent. Although the Mu family is the most low-key among the four great families, he had always focused on medicine shops and medical centers. However, when they worked together and released their might, it was enough to intimidate everyone present. The hearts of the people also seemed to be ignited by the Mu family. Yi Qing Qian turned pale with fright. She looked at everyone in the Mu family. Their faces were filled with anger, as if they wanted to tear her into pieces. Her heart trembled violently. No. Today was her home court. How could she possibly allow Yi Qing Luo to retaliate? She, Yi Qing Qian, was the real main character. In the West Continent, she could summon clouds and rain with a flip of her hand. Everyone had submitted to her power. She would not fail. She still had the dark forces. She didn't believe that the guards of the West Continent plus the dark forces couldn't defeat a dozen Mu family members. What's more, she still had millions of people as a bargaining chip. Based on the kind temperament of the Mu family, they absolutely wouldn't dare to make a move easily. She still had a backup plan. As long as she could drag on till the Wolf Saint technique rushed over. Yi Qing Luo and this group of people who didn't know what's good for them had to die. All of them had to die. With this thought in mind, Yi Qing Qian immediately dashed towards the direction of those people. Star. Chapter 1960. Mu family, as long as one of you makes a move, I will kill a commoner. Yi Qing Qian's hoarse voice bellowed hysterically. She rushed to the front of the commoners. The long whip rolled and 10 over commoners were sucked into the whip. The commoners' faces revealed a terrified expression as they screamed. Yi Qingqian whipped the long whip fiercely and pulled those 10 over commoners towards her. She turned her head and a maniacal smile surfaced on her malevolent face. You still want to scheme against me? As long as you still have a conscience, you will never be able to defeat me. Mu family's old and young's faces sunk. They clenched their fists tightly as they suppressed the anger that was about to explode. Yi Qingqian had indeed grabbed hold of their weakness. They were concerned about the commoners and there was no way they could disregard the innocent commoners. Especially when they saw those commoners' terrified expressions. This made them even more worried that they would not be able to do anything to Yi Qingqian. Mu Zhao's face flushed red. He had lived for so long and this was the first time he had met such a shameless and vicious woman. Looking at those commoners' pleading eyes, listening to those commoners' terrified cries. Mu Zhao clenched his fists tightly as his veins popped out and every piece of muscle was tensed up. In the end, he couldn't stand the commoners' cries. He turned his gaze towards Yi Qingluo, Miss Qingluo. Mu family's old and young sighed slightly. They had not expected that as the older generation of the 4 great families, they had to seek help from a 15-year-old young lady when they met with trouble. Yi Qingluo's lips hung a faintly discernible smile. Her arms crossed her chest as her sweet voice had no trace of nervousness. Old master, don't worry. 5 simple words totally didn't explain what she would do. But for no reason, it made Mu family's old and young heave a sigh of relief as they felt inexplicably at ease. Yi Qingluo's brows rose frivolously as her eyes were filled with smiles as she stared straight at Yi Qingqian. Yi Qingluo hadn't said a word. Yi Qingqian, who met Yi Qingluo's gaze, was the first to fly into a rage. Yi Qingluo. Don't you care about the commoners' lives? Then let's try and see if you kill me first or I kill all these commoners first. Yi Qingluo was still smiling. She didn't move, just using that kind of smiling yet not smiling, examining gaze, quietly and faintly staring at Yi Qingqian. This kind of gaze made Yi Qingqian almost go crazy. But at this moment, among the crowd of commoners, a loud and clear voice suddenly rang. Yi Qingqian. You destroyed our home and now you want to make use of us to threaten Madame Yi Qingluo. Even if we die, we won't let you do whatever you want. We owe the Mu family a great debt of gratitude. Usually, they spent all their wealth for us. Today, I want the Mu family to sacrifice their lives for us. I can't do it. Yi Qingqian, even an ant can swallow an elephant. Even if you're cultivators, no matter how powerful you are, so what? We have millions of companions. One after another, the rousing cries stirred up everyone's hearts. Following the impassioned speeches of those people, the people seemed to be reminded of the Mu family, how they usually did good deeds and served the people wholeheartedly. Today, they wanted the Mu family to once again be controlled by that wicked woman Yi Qingqian. No. They could not stand by and watch as the Mu family was once again controlled by others. Moreover, that person was right. Ants could swallow an elephant. Although their strength was small. But they had the advantage in numbers. Before Yi Qingqian could react, a group of commoners suddenly went crazy as they charged towards her. Yi Qingqian was forcefully pressed onto the ground by 10 over people. Losing the support of profound energy, the illusion whip loosened its grip on those 10 over commoners. Star. Chapter 1961. Ah! You bunch of damned lowly commoners. How dare you hit me? Do you believe that I will make you, A.H. A.H. Yi Qingqian's miserable cries rang. Those frenzied commoners didn't give Yi Qingqian any chance to react. Even if Yi Qingluo wanted to release her profound qi to shake off those commoners. The minute her profound qi was released, before she could shake off the commoners, there were commoners who accurately pressed on her pulse. Following that, the commoners' bodies and those tyrannical fists landed on her. She had no way to raise her concentration and release her profound qi to resist. Yi Qingqian struggled for a few moments, and under the frenzied violence of the commoners, she could only beg bitterly. However, those commoners' eyes were already red from the beating. They couldn't wait to kill Yi Qingqian directly and have a quick death. How could they possibly let Yi Qingqian off just because she begged for mercy? Who asked you to be so arrogant? Who asked you to be so arrogant? Who asked you to use your status as a cultivator to strut around? Who asked you to capture the Mu family's old and young to threaten Yi Qingluo? Who asked you to still want to kill us? If I don't beat you up till you are covered with injuries, if I don't beat you up till you kneel down and call me daddy, I won't have the face to call myself a commoner. The anger and resentment in the hearts of the common people were instantly appeased. There was no mercy in her attacks. Even with the cultivator's qi protecting her. Under the furious beating of hundreds of commoners, Yi Qingqian could only inhale but not exhale. This scene made the Mu family's old and young dumbstruck. They looked at Yi Qingluo in astonishment. This is also part of your plan? Old Master Mu asked in a daze. Seeing Yi Qingluo nodding, Mu family's old and young expressed that this lady was simply too terrifying. It was as if everything was under her control. Where did she get the confidence from, to think that she could incite those commoners? If the commoners were afraid of death, wouldn't that incite failure? Yi Qingluo's lips curled slightly as her long and narrow eyes were filled with craftiness, because I believe the Mu family's position in their hearts. As long as they still have a heart, they will remember what you've done for them. She chuckles and looks at Mu Xiao with admiration. It's all thanks to Grandpa Mu for leading the Mu family to be so upright. Mu family's elder Xiao looked at Yi Qingluo's smiling face and remained silent for a long time. This girl was really amazing. Previously he heard the two young lads mentioning about Yi Qingluo non-stop. They became interested in the girl. Now he saw it with his own eyes. Their fondness towards Yi Qingluo increased. His strength was outstanding, he was loyal, and he had a brilliant mind. He was neither servile nor overbearing, neither arrogant nor rash. Such an amazing girl would definitely become a great person in the future. The two brats in their family had never done anything meaningful in their daily lives. Now, he had finally done something right. Making friends with a miraculous lady like Yi Qingluo. For the Mu family, it was a great fortune. If Mu Zifan and Mu Zifei were present at this moment, they would probably have to wipe away their tears. Were they even related by blood? Below the altar, Yi Qingqian's voice became softer and softer. Yi Qingluo then slowly opened her mouth. Stop, if you continue fighting, someone will really die. Her calm and sweet voice was extremely pleasing to the ear. She was obviously using an ordinary tone and saying ordinary words. Reverberating in the commoners' ears, it easily made those commoners to stop. Their irritable and furious hearts seemed to have calmed down in that clear spring-like voice. Chapter 1962. This is the beloved bedwarming maid of the leader of the dark forces. If you kill her, I'm afraid it will incur the hatred of that leader. Yi Qingluo smiled lightly as she slowly leapt down from the altar. She took leisurely steps and stopped beside Yi Qingqian. When the commoners heard that, they instantly regained their senses. A look of fear and horror appeared on his face. The bedwarming maid of the leader of the dark forces. If they really killed Yi Qingqian, would the dark forces let them off? Luckily, they still retained their rationality, and when they were beating Yi Qingqian up, they didn't hit her vital points. As for the female commoners, their gazes towards Yi Qingqian were filled with disdain. On the contrary, they regretted not kicking her a few more times earlier. A vixen who relied on her seductive looks, they thought that Yi Qingqian was some official in the dark forces. They had not expected that she was just a bed-warming maid. Merely a vixen who used her power to bully others. No matter what the commoners were thinking. They had retreated out of Yi Qingqian's boundary, giving up the space to Yi Qingluo. Yi Qingqian laid on the ground on her last breath, twitching. Her clothes had long since been pulled, revealing her skin. A head of messy hair, full of dirt. There wasn't a single spot on her body which was unscathed. It could be seen how vicious those commoners were. If it was any other cultivator, they probably wouldn't be able to survive after being beaten up by hundreds or even thousands of people. Not knowing what kind of transformation Yi Qingqian had done to her body in the dark forces through the dark arts. Not only was she still alive. The injuries on her body were only superficial wounds. But it didn't harm her life. Yi Qingluo rubbed her chin as she stared at Yi Qingqian calmly. The current Yi Qingqian shouldn't be considered as a person. This kind of iron body, she probably had long become an immortal monster. You slut, I want to kill. Kill you. Yi Qingqian widened her eyes which were filled with hatred as she stared fiercely at Yi Qingluo. She opened her mouth and let out a low, intermittent roar. Yi Qingluo looked down at her. Looking at Yi Qingqian's disheveled state but still tenacious life force. She sighed softly, Yi Qingqian, you're really a monster. Yi Qingqian's face instantly turned pale. Even though he was in a sorry state and had all sorts of scars on his face. Yi Qingluo could still see through her pale face. Ah! Yi Qingluo half squatted down, a pill, from her fingertip, flicked into Yi Qingqian's mouth. It melted in her mouth and Yi Qingqian had no chance to spit it out. Her entire body convulsed in pain as she struggled. A pair of eyes stared venomously at Yi Qingluo. As though she was questioning Yi Qingluo on what medicine she had fed her. Yi Qingluo clapped her hands as she smiled lightly, it's just a medicinal pill to replenish your energy. Anyway, you're an immortal monster, so just stay alive and let me torture you. Nonsense. I'm not a monster, you are. Yi Qingqian's eyes were flustered, as though she had not expected that Yi Qingluo had seen through all her secrets. Her breathing was hurried, as she looked in terror at Yi Qingluo who was slowly approaching. Suddenly, strength came from nowhere. Enduring the intense pain from being beaten up, he got up from the ground. But before she could take a step forward and run a step, suddenly a tearing pain came from the sole of her feet. It was as if something was tearing at her feet. Following that was the intense pain of her bones being smashed. Both her feet knelt heavily on the ground. Yi Qingqian raised her head in terror as she stared at Yi Qingluo. What did you do to me? My body. Star. Chapter 1963. Yi Qingluo's lips curled upwards as she gave an alluring smile. Of course it's to stop you from leaving. Yi Qingqian's eyes were overwhelmed with shock as the intense pain made her body, which was sprawled on the ground, started to twist. Her 5 fingers clenched tightly onto the ground as the hard ground was scratched by her fingers, leaving streaks of marks. Yi Qingqian, do you think that you can still hope for those dark forces' remnants to save you? Yi Qingluo looked at her, trying her best to stand up as she couldn't help but laughed out softly. Yi Qingluo's slender brows rose as she pointed behind Yi Qingqian. Why don't you take a look? Yi Qingqian's beautiful eyes kept expanding as it was filled with malevolence. I'm not lying to you. That pill which I fed you earlier is to replenish your physical strength. Other than your legs, you still have the strength to turn your head. Yi Qingluo crossed her arms as she looked at her with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Yi Qingqian's face sunk as she moved her body. Indeed, her body, which was weakened by the commoners, regained its strength. Other than the intense pain from her legs, there wasn't any discomfort in the other parts of her body. Yi Qing Qian naturally didn't feel that this was Yi Qing Luo's kindness, intentionally sparing her life. This was definitely Yi Qing Luo, that slut's new way of torturing people. If Yi Qing Luo knew what Yi Qing Qian was thinking, she would definitely smile and nod her head as she told her, "Young lady, you've guessed correctly." Yi Qing Qian laid on the ground as her bent fingers clenched into a fist. After some time, she turned her head back as she looked at the place where the commoners were standing. She was filled with apprehension and uneasiness. Why, when she was being beaten up by those lowly commoners? The 200 Dark Forces men whom she had specially selected actually didn't save her or stop those commoners' actions. When Yi Qing Qian turned her head back, she saw. Round after round, guards dressed in royal family's armor surrounded the entire West Square. Those 200 Dark Forces men had long been subdued by the royal family's guards and had no way to resist. The crowd slowly opened up a path. They saw a man dressed in a dragon-embroidered robe walking over with steady footsteps, filled with majesty. Dragon-embroidered robe. That was the dragon robe that only the current monarch could wear. Yi Qing Qian's eyes were filled with astonishment. "You, how could you possibly?" "No, Ling Fengning, how could you?" The person in front of her was delicate, handsome, and extremely gentle. He looked like a good young master, a very amiable young master. Wasn't that the current crown prince, Ling Fengning? Hadn't she locked Ling Fengning in the crown prince's chambers? Ling Fengying's tiger talisman as well as the sovereign's jade seal had already fallen into her hands. How was it possible for Ling Fengning to become a monarch? He could even lead troops to counter her. No, impossible. Yi Qing Qian staggered as she stood up and pointed at Ling Fengning as she cried out sharply, "Ling Fengning, are you thinking of rebelling? Without an imperial edict, how could you become the monarch of the West Continent?" She pointed at the imposing royal guards. "Do you all want to rebel with that traitor? Do you all want to become traitors?" Yi Qing Qian was hysterical. Those royal guards did not seem to have heard what she said at all. He stood there like a towering mountain. Presumptuous. How dare you be disrespectful to the new monarch? The third-generation senior statesman rebuked angrily, "The new monarch is our West Continent's legitimate new monarch. How can we allow a woman like you to be so presumptuous?" Chapter 1964. What do you mean by legitimate? You're talking rubbish. Yi Qing Qian gritted her teeth. According to the West Continent's regulations, before the crown prince ascends the throne, he must obtain the army tiger emblem and West Continent jade seal from the late emperor before he can hold the ascension ceremony. After a pause, Yi Qing Qian raised her voice. He doesn't have the tiger talisman or the imperial jade seal, nor did he report the enthronement ceremony, so he can't be considered as a civil affairs official. How can you insist that he didn't? Yi Qing Luo smiled lightly as she opened her mouth, as she slowly walked towards Ling Fengning. I. Yi Qing Qian stuttered. Of course, she couldn't say that the tiger tally was with her, and the jade seal was with her. Otherwise, Yi Qing Luo would definitely snatch the tiger talisman and imperial jade seal by force. She absolutely could not hand over the tiger tally and imperial jade seal. Otherwise, if Ling Fengning had a legitimate reason to cooperate with Yi Qing Luo. Her plan to convince the Wolf Saint Law to start with the West Continent, to rebuild the Dark Forces, and to unify the Nirvana realm once again, was going to be ruined. She absolutely could not fail. He absolutely could not lose the backing of the Wolf Saint technique. Yi Qing Qian clenched her teeth as she glanced at Ling Fengning. If he has it, then take it out and let all the commoners in West Continent have a look. Otherwise, who would be convinced by a new emperor? However, Yi Qing Qian's words had just landed. A loud and clear voice suddenly erupted from the surroundings, resounding through the entire West Wave Square. I'm convinced. I'm convinced. Congratulations on your ascension to the throne. Congratulations on your ascension to the throne. The commoners were indeed experts at face slapping. Within minutes, he had slapped Yi Qingqian's face. Yi Qingqian's face turned steely green as she retreated a few steps. These few steps caused the sharp pain in her legs to attack her again, as if her bones were being torn and crushed. She screamed in pain and fell heavily to the ground. She hugged her legs and screamed in pain. Her screams were instantly drowned out by the enthusiastic shouts of the people. Ling Fengying's popularity in the commoners' hearts had always been extremely high. Even when Ling Fenghua was still around. Ling Fengying was the most beloved prince by the people. After that, Ling Fengying became the crown prince, the future monarch. The commoners all raised their hands in approval. Right now, the Western continent was under the control of an evil woman, and she was willfully slaughtering the innocent, dyeing the Western continent with blood. Even if Ling Fengying didn't officially become the new monarch, they would definitely use their mouths, portraying Ling Fengying as the rightful new ruler. Now that Ling Fengying had come out, he was saving the West continent from the abyss of suffering. The commoners didn't care if he had the tiger seal or the jade seal. Those superficial things were of no use to the common people. They only knew that once Ling Fengying became the new monarch, their country would be prosperous and the people would be at peace. Yi Qingqian was convulsing in pain. He could still hear those commoners' passionate cheers for Ling Fengying. Her heart was bone-chilling. If she had known earlier, she would have killed Ling Fengying. Without the tiger talisman, without the imperial jade seal, Ling Fengying had no real power at all. What right did he have to become the monarch of the Western continent? The third-generation doyen looked at the woman lying on the ground in agony. He took out something from his bosom and held it up high. The tiger seal is here, royal army, listen up. Those tens of thousands of valiant and high-spirited royal guards exploded into a deep roar in unison. The royal army is here. Today, this general will hand over the royal tiger seal to the new monarch. The new monarch will lead the royal army to kill this evil woman. Protect the Western continent. The tiger seal was respectfully presented to Ling Fengying. Star. Chapter 1965. Kill that wicked woman. Protect the West continent. Kill that wicked woman. Protect the West continent. Kill that wicked woman. Protect the West continent. The army's roars rose and fell, each one more stirring the hearts of the people. So much so that even the commoners' impassioned hearts were ignited. Following that, the royal guards raised their arms and shouted. Yi Qingqian's face turned pale. She looked at that piece of tiger talisman in disbelief, watching Ling Fengying receiving the tiger talisman and raising it up high. Listening to the commoners and the royal guards' cries of wanting to get rid of her. Her heart was trembling fiercely. Uncontrollable terror rose from the bottom of her heart. No. Impossible, that tiger talisman of yours is fake. It must be fake. Yi Qingqian shook her head in panic. Her voice was extremely soft, and under the deep and resounding cries, it was hard to hear what she was saying. But Yi Qingluo heard it very clearly. She smiled till her eyes were curved as her eyes were filled with a faint smile. Yi Qingqian, based on your IQ, you still want to control an entire continent. She paused as she looked at Ling Fengying's direction. My silly elder sister, there are 2 pieces of tiger talisman. WH. What? Yi Qingqian stared at Ling Fengying in shock. No, you're lying to me. He can't become the new monarch, he doesn't have the qualifications to become the new monarch. Yi Qingluo laughed. Why doesn't he have the qualifications? Could it be that you think you have the qualifications? Yi Qingqian, although you've already been chased out of Three Springs sect, but you're after all still a citizen of the West Continent. You're using the dark forces to attempt to control the West Continent, seeking benefits for the dark forces. Isn't this considered as treason? Saying that, she lifted a lock of hair and twined it around her fingertips as she laughed softly. Tsk, Yi Ching Qian, you're the real traitor. When the commoners heard that, their arrogance rose even higher. They clamored that they wanted to kill Yi Ching Qian. Yi Ching Luo raised her eyes as she smiled at Ling Fengying, new monarch. This is after all my elder sister, and as a younger sister, I can't bear to see her die so miserably, so I'll plead on her behalf, hoping that the new monarch will hand this elder sister of mine over to me to deal with and spare her life. How about that? Ling Fengying naturally had no objections as he nodded in agreement. Yi Ching Qian retreated backwards in fear. She didn't believe that Yi Ching Luo would be so kind to plead for her. If it fell into Yi Ching Luo's hands, she would rather die than live. You. What do you want to do? Yi Ching Luo. Even if I die, I will never. Paw. A loud sound pierced through the air and a long whip fell heavily onto Yi Ching Qian's body. Yi Ching Qian let out a blood-curdling scream as she was whipped and rolled on the ground several times. Yi Ching Qian's body was also left with a deep whip mark. Yi Ching Luo. That's mine. Yi Ching Qian saw the long whip in Yi Ching Luo's hand and was so infuriated that a mouthful of blood spurted out. Yi Ching Luo was holding the dark illusion whip in her hand. Yi Ching Qian and the dark illusory whip had long signed the contract. Yi Ching Luo held the dark illusory whip and actually didn't encounter any resistance from the dark illusory whip. This was impossible. Yi Ching Qian tried hard to adjust the profound qi in her body, trying to summon the dark illusion whip. But no matter how she tried to summon it, the dark illusion whip just hung limply in Yi Ching Luo's hand, without any reaction at all. More accurately speaking, she didn't detect any presence from the dark illusion whip at all. Could it be? Could it be that Yi Ching Luo had destroyed her dark illusion whip and completely corroded the dark illusion whip's demonic qi? No. How could Yi Ching Luo possibly have such an ability? Star. Chapter 1966. Yi Ching Luo seemed to have noticed Yi Ching Qian's surprise. She shook the dark magic whip in her hand, like a poisonous snake, twisting and circling. She giggled, "Don't be surprised, it's not the first time I destroyed your long whip." You. Yi Ching Qian's face suddenly turned gloomy. Of course she would not forget how Yi Ching Luo humiliated her in the past. Yi Tianquang racked his brains, spent money and resources to find a supreme-grade whip for her. In the end, Yi Ching Luo handed it over to Ling Fenghua's hands, allowing Ling Fenghua to destroy her soft whip in front of her. At that time, she truly loved Ling Fenghua. The whip was destroyed. She was heartbroken. Now, Yi Ching Luo had once again destroyed her second long whip. Demonic weapons should not appear in Nirvana realm. Yi Ching Luo suddenly moved her wrist. The long whip in her hand turned into a poisonous snake, scuttling in the direction of Yi Ching Qian. The poisonous snake was like an afterimage, winding and circling in the air. As if it had a life of its own, it heavily whipped Yi Ching Qian's body. Yi Ching Qian screamed miserably. There was another bloody whip mark on her body. The whip mark was scarlet, oozing blood. It was a ghastly sight. Yi Ching Qian knelt on the ground from the whip. She looked at Yi Ching Luo with eyes full of disbelief. Yi Ching Luo's whip skills were too strange. When Yi Ching Luo lashed out, she didn't even have time to see the trajectory of the long whip. One must know that this dark magic whip was already a dead object. Even she would not be able to execute such a smooth whip technique. How was this possible? Since when did Yi Qing Luo have such attainments in whip skills? Yi Qing Qian, don't you like to play with the whip? Now, I will accompany you to play. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled up slightly, her sweet smile seemed to carry the brilliance of the world. But when he met her charming eyes, he could clearly see the murderous intent in Yi Qing Luo's eyes. Yi Qing Qian obviously saw that murderous intent. Yi Qing Qian was terrified. He had clearly thought of thousands of possibilities. However, he had never thought that things would take such a turn. Ling Fengning became the new monarch and led the royal army to subdue the people from the dark forces whom she had been relying on. He had lost the help of the dark forces. In front of Yi Qing Luo, she was just a drag. Could it be, was he really going to die in Yi Qing Luo's hands today? No, she didn't want to die. Before Yi Qing Luo died, how could she be willing to die? Yi Qing Qian's malevolent face was howling as she suddenly pounced towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. Her pounce was too sudden. Among the crowd, a few panicky and anxious cries were heard, "Qing Luo." A few figures walked out from the crowd. Just as Yi Qing Qian was about to pounce onto Yi Qing Luo, suddenly, a long edge transformed into countless black whip shadows in midair. Immediately following that, it covered the sky and covered the earth, as it tightly bound Yi Qing Qian into the long whip. "Don't worry, how could I let you die?" Yi Qing Luo sneered as her arms suddenly exerted strength and threw the bound Yi Qing Qian heavily onto the ground. "Ah!" Yi Qing Qian let out a blood-curdling scream. "Paw paw paw! Paw paw paw! Paw paw!" A series of long whip lashing sounds were heard, one after another. The long whip didn't contain any profound qi. It was just that brute force lashing, on the contrary, made one's skin split open, causing unbearable pain. One whip after another, the entire sky above the public square was filled with paw-paw sounds. Star. Chapter 1967. Yi Qing Qian screamed miserably. Her body was whipped as she rolled on the ground. Her skin and flesh, which had just been healed by Yi Qing Luo's pill, was whipped once again, and it was a horrible sight to behold. Yi Qing Qian's miserable cries continued. The surroundings were in silence. No one dared to open their mouths to break the atmosphere. Everyone's eyes were filled with shock and admiration as they looked at the young lady who had whipped Yi Qing Qian till she rolled on the ground. Could it be that she had fed Yi Qing Qian the pill earlier so that she could whip to her heart's content now? Looking at Yi Qing Luo whipping one after another ruthlessly. But the expression on her face had not changed at all. A faint smile hung on her lips as her eyes squinted, looking extremely languid. This young lady was really terrifying. Yi Qing Luo whipped Yi Qing Qian and every whip was full of strength. Even though she didn't release her profound energy. These whips were enough to destroy Yi Qing Qian's internal organs and every single one of her tendons. That's right, tendons. Every whip from Yi Qing Luo was on Yi Qing Qian's tendons and bones. She wanted to shatter Yi Qing Qian's bones and break her tendons. No matter how Yi Qing Qian's body was transformed into an undying monster. Under this kind of shattering whips, there was no way to reverse the situation. Yi Qing Qian had been jumping around for too long. Every time she jumped around, it would hurt her brothers. Her reverse scale was her brothers. Yi Qing Qian had challenged her bottom line time and time again. Yi Fengyu was almost killed by her. Devil Class's brothers almost died because of her. The brothers in the world group suffered serious injuries time and time again because of her. All of these, if it wasn't to make Yi Qing Qian unable to live or die, how would she be able to vent the anger in her heart? Letting Yi Qing Qian die was letting her off too easily. Yi Qing Qian's life wasn't as valuable as a strand of her brother's hair. She would not let Yi Qing Qian die. She would let Yi Qing Qian live in despair, living her days in despair. Paw! A sharp glint flashed past Yi Qing Luo's eyes. The long whip in her hand had ruthlessly smashed Yi Qing Qian onto the side of the altar. Following that, another round of whip shadows fell from the sky. Time passed, second by second. After an unknown period of time, the commoners only felt their legs go numb, and their bodies almost stiffened from maintaining a posture. Yi Qing Luo then slowly retracted her long whip. When Yi Qing Luo stopped her whipping, the commoners were shocked as they looked at the place where the abuse was taking place. Blood and minced meat were splattered all over the altar. Yi Qing Qian laid on the ground. How would she have the strength to stand up? Apart from her face, there was not a single part of her body that was unscathed. His skin was lacerated and his flesh was badly mangled. Blood stained the place where she was lying. The entire scene was as terrifying as it could be. They were as shocked as they could be. It was as disgusting as it could get. Some of the more timid ones directly bent over and began to vomit. This scene was truly too shocking. He had seen beheadings and torture. He would say that he had never seen such a bloody whipping. What was even more terrifying was, under this kind of whipping situation, Yi Qing Qian remained conscious from the start till the end. Even though his body was a bloody mess, his bones were broken, and his tendons were severed. However, she still had one breath left. Furthermore, her consciousness was extremely clear. Moreover, she had sufficient energy. She could scream miserably, she could curse, she could roar, her voice was sharp and shrill. But she just didn't have the energy to avoid Yi Qing Luo's long whip. She remained conscious, suffering the whipping to such an extent. Chapter 1968. Yi Qing Luo. Kill me if you have the ability. Just kill me. Yi Qing Qian was in so much pain that she wished she was dead as she cried out in pain. She simply couldn't stand such cruel treatment. She could clearly feel the pain of her body being whipped, the feeling of her bones being smashed, the feeling of her meridians being ripped. The pain of being whipped one after another on her body. She could also clearly feel the heart-wrenching, lung-splitting, and tearing pain of her flesh being torn apart. She wanted to die. Rather die. She didn't want to suffer such torture. Qing Luo, enough. Behind her, those few people who had just walked out from the crowd rushed up to the altar. They stood behind Yi Qing Luo, their eyes filled with worry. Earlier Yi Qing Luo was totally not like her usual self. That kind of imposing manner. That kind of ruthlessness. Even if it was them, they were slightly flustered. Most of them were worried about Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Qian, who was lying on the ground, conscious, her gaze swept past those few ordinary-looking people dressed in coarse linen clothes, as her eyes suddenly widened viciously. It's you guys. It's you guys. Earlier it was you guys who incited those commoners to make a move against me. If they were ordinary commoners, how would they dare to lead the way? This was Yi Qing Luo's scheme. It was Yi Qing Luo who had arranged people first, preparing to kill with a borrowed knife at the right time. Seeing that they were exposed, Long Yunzhan and the others slowly tore off the human skin mask on their faces, revealing their original looks. These few people were indeed arranged by Yi Qing Luo, to mix in among the commoners. Long Yunzhan, Mo Yuing, Tong Zi Qing trio. But they weren't specially arranged to incite the commoners, to intentionally lead the way. She only wanted them to investigate what kind of trap Yi Qing Qian had set, waiting for her to fall into it. But she had not expected Yi Qing Qian to be so confident in herself. She thought that with the 200 Dark Forces remnants, and using the Mu family and the commoners as a bargaining chip, she would be able to force Yi Qing Luo to give in. Hence, it gave Yi Qing Luo a chance to retaliate. In the end, it turned out to be like this. To put it bluntly, it was caused by Yi Qingqian's overconfidence. Long Yunzhan took a look at Yi Qingqian, who had almost turned into a pile of rotten flesh as his brows creased as he asked calmly, "Qing Luo, what do you intend to do with her next?" If Yi Qing Luo still wanted to torture Yi Qingqian, then he would be the one to do it. He simply couldn't bear to see that cold and ruthless Qing Luo again. Of course. Yi Qing Luo smiled sweetly as she looked down at Yi Qingqian, sent her back to Wolf Saint technique. Yi Qingqian's eyes suddenly lit up as she stared at Yi Qing Luo in astonishment and suspicion. "You? What tricks are you trying to play again?" How could Yi Qing Luo possibly send her back to Wolf Saint technique's side? If she returned to Wolf Saint Law's side, how could he let the Wolf Saint technique let Yi Qing Luo off? This was definitely one of Yi Qing Luo's tricks. Yi Qing Luo wanted to see her despairing expression and intentionally deceived her. Send them back. Tong Ziqing was also stunned. Wouldn't that be releasing a tiger back to the mountain? Yi Qing Luo chuckled, her eyes filled with ridicule. Tiger. Her. He had already turned into a pile of rotten meat, yet he still wanted to turn things around. Of course, nothing was absolute. But would she give Yi Qingqian a chance to turn things around? No. She would only give Yi Qingqian endless despair. Suddenly, just at this moment, the sound of horse hooves was heard from the commoner's direction. A royal guard flipped down and speedily rushed towards Ling Fengying as he knelt down. Immediately following that, Ling Fengying's steady voice rang, "Miss Yi, it's bad. The dark forces have brought along a few other forces and are rushing towards West Lawn Public Square." Star. Chapter 1969. Dark Forces. When the commoners heard the new emperor's words, their expressions changed drastically. They had witnessed the power of the Dark Coalition. Over the past few days, the dark forces had shrouded the entire Western continent at an extremely fast speed and had taken control of every major force and family. He heard that the Dark Organization had also brought a few other organizations here. The commoners were all panicking. The courage he had to beat up Yi Qingqian earlier had now vanished into thin air. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows rose slightly as she raised her eyes towards Ling Fengying. Then, the corners of her mouth curled up. So what? Since he's here, then he's here. The matter of the West Continent can also be settled once and for all. Ling Fengying's tightly creased brows slowly relaxed. His eyes were resolute as he solemnly gazed at Yi Qing Luo. Since Yi Qing Luo said so. Which meant that Yi Qing Luo already had a foolproof plan. As long as Yi Qing Luo hadn't collapsed, the Western continent could still be saved. What he needed to do was to fully believe in Yi Qing Luo, to fully assist her. By now, Ling Fengying had already bet the latter half of his life, as well as everything in the West continent, on Yi Qing Luo. He firmly believed that his foresight had never been wrong. Ha ha ha. Wolf Saint technique is here to save me. Yi Qing Luo, you're dead meat. You will definitely die. When Yi Qingqian, who was lying on the ground, heard this news, her face immediately revealed an ecstatic expression. Yi Qing Luo squinted her eyes slightly, as she looked at the lady by her feet with a smile which didn't look like a smile, and scoffed lightly, "Really? It seems that the dark forces really have a way to rebuild another body for you." She had already turned into a pile of rotten flesh, and Yi Qingqian still wanted to use the Wolf Saint art to save her. It could be seen that the Wolf Saint technique definitely had a way to solve the problem of her rotten flesh. The dark secret art was already this heaven-defying. Yi Qingqian stared at Yi Qing Luo fiercely. "Wolf Saint Law dotes on me so much, he will definitely cure me. As for you, you will die in the hands of the Holy Wolf technique. Moreover, the Wolf Saint Law will definitely let you die in extreme agony for me." Yi Qingqian's malevolent face radiated an intense murderous intent. Just thinking about the wolf saint technique made him rush over. She could almost see the state of Yiqing Luo's death. The blood in his heart began to boil. Really? Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she gave an extremely elegant smile. Just nice. I also want to see with my own eyes how much the wolf saint technique pampers you. As she spoke, she smiled and narrowed her eyes. She then continued in a seemingly unintentional manner, so, I'm here to test the wolf saint's love for you. Yiqing Luo's words made Yiqing Jian's face turn pale. The expression on his face also froze. Recalling the miserable state of being whipped, Yiqing Qian was overwhelmed with shock. What else do you want to do? Paw! A whip flew out horizontally. That long whip landed heavily on Yiqing Qian's face. A scarlet line of blood appeared on that sinister and twisted but still extremely bewitching face. Yiqing Qian let out a blood-curdling scream as she didn't even have the strength to cover her face. My face! My face! Paw! Another whip landed on Yiqing Qian's face. Yiqing Qian screamed miserably, Don't hit my face. Don't ruin my face. Yiqing Luo, I'm apologizing to you, it's all my fault, don't touch my face. She wanted to struggle and avoid Yiqing Luo's whip. But she couldn't muster up any strength at all. She could only cry and beg Yiqing Luo not to touch this face which she depended on for survival. Even if it was to lower her head to the Yiqing Luo whom she had always hated, she was willing. Chapter 1970. Yiqing Luo stopped. She bent down slightly and glanced at Yiqing Qian who was begging for mercy. She smiled. Her long and narrow eyes outlined an incomparably beautiful arc. It seems like you are quite self-aware. She whispered and her laughter was soothing. Yiqing Qian shook her head with all her might as the wounds on her face started to drip with blood. Her eyes were filled with shock as she cried out, I beg you Yiqing Luo, I beg you. Don't touch my face, even if you kill me. Don't touch my face. The commoners were all dumbstruck. Even when she was whipped into a pile of minced meat, Yiqing Qian had never given in. But now, because of her looks, she lowered her voice and begged bitterly. This was the so-called, to a lady, her face was more important than her life. For her own face. Even if she had to die. But if she lost her life, what was the use of her face? Yiqing Qian begged over and over again but it didn't move Yiqing Luo at all. Yiqing Luo swung her long whip which was like a poisonous snake's whip shadow as it swayed gently. Her long and narrow eyes squinted slightly as a glint flashed past, but Yiqing Qian, have you ever thought of letting my brothers off when you dealt with them? Yiqing Qian's begging stopped abruptly. Yiqing Luo laughed lightly, you won't. Yes, Yiqing Qian would not let Yiqing Luo's brothers off. To Yiqing Qian, killing Yiqing Luo's brothers was equivalent to cutting off Yiqing Luo's left and right arms. Yiqing Qian couldn't wait to kill everyone who was related to Yiqing Luo. How could she possibly let Yiqing Luo's brothers off? Similarly, Yiqing Luo would not let her off. Yiqing Qian's face was filled with dead despair. Rumble. Da-da-da. A deafening sound was heard from afar. The dark forces and those who had already collaborated with the dark forces rushed over with the main force. Yiqing Luo raised her eyes and looked towards the direction of that black mass, attacking from. Suddenly, her lips curled into an indistinct cold smile. Yiqing Qian, I really can't wait to know if you two are true love. Following Yiqing Luo's sweet laughter. The long whip in her hand covered the sky and covered the earth as it struck towards Yiqing Qian's face, as it struck downwards. Ah! Yiqing Luo! You bitch! I'll kill you, I'll kill you! Yiqing Qian's miserable cries resounded throughout the entire West continent. Wolf Saint Technique, who had rushed over, also heard Yi Ching Qian's voice. Wolf Saint Dharma leapt up and quickly walked past the commoners, landing on the altar as he frantically searched for traces of Yi Ching Qian. On the altar, sand and dust billowed. He had not yet steadied himself. Suddenly, something was thrown towards him. Wolf Xingfa's eyes turned cold, and he lifted his leg to kick at the incoming object. With a muffled groan, that thing was kicked to the ground. Wolf Xingfa's face turned green as he focused his gaze. The one he had kicked off the altar just now, it was Yi Ching Qian, who had been whipped till her entire body was in a terrible state. Wolf Saint Dharma's heart tightened as he stared at Yi Ching Qian's broken body, as his body trembled slightly. He speedily rushed down the altar and knelt beside Yi Ching Qian. Did you hear what I said? Respond to me, respond to me. Wolf Saint Dharma's voice was trembling, as though it was filled with boundless affection. Yi Ching Qian, who was lying in a pile of minced meat on the ground, trembled slightly. Chapter 1971. Wolf Saint Magic saw Yi Ching Qian's body trembling slightly. A trace of ecstasy flashed past his eyes. Alive, still alive, that's good, as long as she was still alive. Even if this body was crippled, it didn't matter. Just nice, he could also use the dark arts to fulfill his long-cherished wish. The corners of Wolf Saint Magic's mouth couldn't help but rise. Both hands covered Yi Ching Qian's head. That was the only place Yi Ching Qian could touch. Wolf Saint Magic, save me, save me. Yi Ching Qian tried hard to make her voice sound aggrieved and pitiful. Her head was gently turned towards his direction by the Holy Wolf Technique. Yi Ching Qian adjusted the expression on her face, a pair of beautiful eyes, sparkling with tears of grievance. Blinking his eyes, he poured out his endless suffering. But Yi Ching Qian thought that her pitiful trick would succeed. But when Wolf Saint Magic's vision touched Yi Ching Qian's face, the gentle expression on his face stiffened, his eyes suddenly filled with a violent storm. His 5 fingers suddenly tightened, grabbing Yi Ching Qian's long hair. Yi Ching Qian felt the pain, drew a cold breath, and suddenly tears overflowed. Wolf Saint Magic, you're hurting me, she said it coquettishly, pitiful. Usually, Wolf Saint Magic loved this tone of voice of hers. But, this time, it made Wolf Saint Magic increase the strength in his hands. He pulled her hair, lifting her up. Yi Ching Qian only felt a tingling pain on her scalp, so painful that she almost fainted. In her ears, Wolf Saint Magic's vicious and furious growl rang. How dare you hurt your own face? How dare you ruin your own face? Wolf Saint Magic. Yi Ching Qian's eardrum seemed to be ruptured, her face twisted in pain. This distortion caused her face, which was covered in bloody scars from being whipped by the long whip and could almost be described as a bloody mess, to appear even more terrifying. It also stimulated Wolf Saint Magic's vision. His sinister eyes stared fiercely at Yi Ching Qian's face. 5 fingers suddenly clasped her lower jaw. Yi Ching Qian. You obviously know. This Saint Magic most values your face. How dare you hurt this face, to this extent? Yi Ching Qian's body stiffened. Her fine black hair that was being hung up and the sharp pain of her scalp being pulled could not compare to the piercing pain of the Wolf Saint Technique's words. The name that the Wolf Saint art called her was no longer but Yi Ching Qian. He wanted to take back her identity as protector. Did he want to abandon her? Yes, she had always known. The Holy Wolf Dharma doted on her in every possible way because of her face. Her face was exactly the same as the face of the woman he loved deeply. The woman that Lang Xingfa deeply loved had always been a taboo in the dark forces. Yi Ching Qian did not know much. He only knew that the woman used to be one of the holy techniques of the dark forces, called the Fox Holy Technique. As for her, it was because her appearance was exactly the same as the Fox Saint Technique. He caught the attention of the Wolf Saint Technique. He enjoyed the boundless love of the Wolf Saint Technique. Yi Qing Qian wasn't worried about becoming a substitute. She knew that the so-called Fox Saint Technique had followed the King of Darkness to death after the King of Darkness had been sealed 10,000 years ago. How could a dead person compete with her? Yi Qing Qian had always thought that with her means. It was just a matter of time for the Wolf Saint Technique to fall in love with her. But now, Yi Qing Qian knew that her cognition was wrong. She didn't have this face, so she didn't have the bargaining chip to attract the Wolf Saint Technique. Without the Wolf Saint Technique, she was only had consciousness, but her body was completely destroyed. How could she survive? Chapter 1972. Wolf Saint Technique. You can heal my face can definitely be healed. Yi Qing Qian opened her mouth in trepidation as she stuttered, I'm wrong, it's my fault. I shouldn't have relied on your adoration and acted recklessly. I shouldn't have discussed with you and found trouble with Yi Qing Luo. Wolf Saint Technique, save me, I will definitely serve you well, whatever you want. Yi Qing Qian knew. As long as Wolf Saint Technique was willing. Wolf Saint Technique definitely had a way to save her. Her face, her crippled body, could all receive a brand new transformation. Yi Qing Luo. Wolf Saint Technique gritted his teeth as he spat out these 3 words. Suddenly, he raised his head abruptly. His scarlet-red eyes were like a sharp blade, piercing fiercely towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. Yi Qing Luo stood leisurely on the altar, her long and narrow eyes squinted as her slender brows rose, apparently in a good mood. More accurately speaking, she was the one who was enjoying the show. She guessed correctly. What Wolf Saint Technique cared about was indeed Yi Qing Qian's face. That time at the Dark Forces, when she saw that Wolf Saint Technique knew that Yi Qing Qian once had 2 men, he didn't reveal any jealous expression, so she had her suspicions. If he really loved Yi Qing Qian, then how was it possible that when he heard about Ling Fenghua or Ling Fengying, he wasn't moved at all? Today's test was indeed as expected, exactly the same. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled up in ridicule as she squinted at Wolf Saint Technique and laughed softly, so Wolf Saint Technique's love is so shallow. It's just a face ruined and he abused her in this way. I really feel bitterly disappointed for my poor eldest sister. The commoners. Was this called ruining a face? This was basically ruining Yi Qing Qian's entire person. They were very curious, how on earth did Yi Qing Luo manage to pull off such nonsense in a serious manner? The veins on Wolf Saint Technique's forehead popped out as the sinister scarlet eyes glinted with an even more intense glint. Yi Qing Luo clicked her tongue. My eldest sister's entire life had already been extremely miserable. In order to climb up the throne, she finally managed to sleep with the previous crown prince and worked hard to climb up to the current monarch. Luckily our new monarch is an upright gentleman and was not moved. This big sister of mine can only linger around, and finally met such a good man like Wolf Saint Fa, but unfortunately, he's such a shallow person. She shook her head and said regretfully, I really feel sad for my poor sister. Pucci, the commoners couldn't help but laugh out loud. This Miss Ye's mouth was indeed a little too poisonous. Although she was speaking up for her elder sister, she still felt that it was unfair. But apparently, it was to tell everyone about Yi Qing Qian's glorious achievements. This Yi Qing Qian was once the #1 beauty in Three Springs City. As it turned out, she was just a high-class lady with the title of a daughter of a rich family. No, that's not right. Three Springs sect had long severed all relations with Yi Qing Qian. Yi Qingqian couldn't even be considered as a high-ranking lady. Wolf Saint Technique's eyes were filled with anger as he clenched his fists tightly and gritted his teeth as he stared fiercely at Yi Qing Luo and shouted sternly, "Yi Qing Luo, if you dare to hurt her face, I want your life." Wolf Saint Technique only cared about Yi Qingqian's face. As for that body, how many men had been there before, he didn't care. What he wanted was that face. But Yi Qing Luo actually destroyed that face. He had completely destroyed the only obsession he had for thousands of years. He must make Yi Qing Luo pay a painful price. Bam! He flipped his palm and slapped Yi Qingqian's body towards Heiji, who was curled up in the corner of the altar. Heiji hurriedly caught Yi Qingqian, who was like mud. "Stay here for this Saint Technique. If you let this face get hurt to such a state, this Saint Technique will settle the score with you later." Wolf Saint Technique threw out a sentence. His figure suddenly flashed as he flew towards the altar. Star. Chapter 1973. Wolf Saint Technique landed on the altar, standing face to face with Yi Qing Luo. His sinister eyes shot out an intense ruthless light. He clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles were protruding. Yi Qing Luo gave a light smile. "Oh. Is Wolf Saint Technique fighting with me for the dark forces or for Yi Qingqian's face?" Wolf Saint Technique sneered. "I'm not going to argue with you. Today, I'm going to avenge the King of Darkness. To avenge the dark forces. If it wasn't for Yi Qing Luo, the dark forces would have controlled half of Nirvana realm by now. If it wasn't for Yi Qing Luo, the King of Darkness's plan would have succeeded. If it wasn't for Yi Qing Luo, they would still be the high and mighty Dark Saint Technique. But now, everything was ruined because of Yi Qing Luo. The dark forces were completely exposed in Nirvana realm. Absorbing the young cultivator's soul had also infuriated Nirvana realm. There was no place for them in Nirvana realm. Moreover, Yi Qing Luo joined forces with the Imperial Palace to exterminate the dark forces, almost losing 2/3 of the dark forces. Now, the dark forces who escaped with the few pharaohs and saint techniques were not more than 1,000 people. All these were thanks to Yi Qing Luo. Now, the dark forces' revival could only depend on the West Continent to make a comeback. They could only succeed and not fail. Yi Qing Luo must die. Wolf Saint Technique's face sunk as he raised his hand high. "Everyone, when the dark forces take over the West Continent, the conditions that I promised you will be fulfilled." Behind him, a deafening roar was heard, echoing Wolf Saint Technique's words. Yi Qing Luo raised her brows as she looked past Wolf Saint Technique towards the crowd. She was very interested in the forces that chose to cooperate with the dark forces at this time. Did those people really believe that the dark forces had the ability to destroy the West Continent, or were they stupid? This look was within Yi Qing Luo's expectations, but at the same time, it was unexpected. Yi Fengru represented Three Springs sect and brought Three Springs sect's power to stand with the dark forces, which was expected. After all, when Three Springs sect restored Yi Qingqian's identity, it indicated that Three Springs sect would cooperate with the dark forces. And the reason why Yi Qingqian was able to control the entire West Continent so quickly, even the four great families were unable to resist. It was because of the Three Springs sect's help. The Three Springs sect had to stand on the side of the dark forces no matter what. As for the one standing beside Yi Fengru, it made Yi Qing Luo a little surprised. Because, wasn't that person the patriarch of one of the four great profounder clans, the Shengguan clan? Ever since the Shengguan clan was expelled from the four great profounder clans, then, he vanished without a trace. He never heard any news about the Shengguan clan again. He never expected to see the Shengguan clan on the side of the dark forces. It could be seen that after the Shengguan clan was removed from the list, they had no choice but to follow the dark forces. What Yi Qing Luo was most concerned about was the person standing behind Yi Fengru and the Shengguan family. Yi Qing Luo's intuition told her that that person was the most dangerous. It was a woman of about 40 years of age. He was dressed in a coarse green robe, and his hair was tied neatly behind his head like a man's. She looked like a Taoist nun. There was a long sword on her back, and the sword hilt was emitting a black aura, which was extremely terrifying. This person looked extremely unfamiliar. In Yi Qing Luo's memory, she had never seen her before. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.